Please welcome Victoria Chow.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, hi everyone. For those of you guys who don't know me, I'm Victoria. I'm from Hong Kong, and I have a cocktail bar called The Woods. It was previously in central Hong Kong, but we've recently become the world's first nomadic bar. I also do some drink consulting. I'm also a spirits educator, and I love marketing spirits. So we're not actually here today. I'm not here today to tell you what the next big drink trend really is. I'm not here to tell you that you should start growing cannabis in your backyard to infuse into your cocktails. Not telling you that you should be clarifying your cocktails. I'm really just here to start a conversation and kind of do a thought experiment to think about some of these abstract things that we talk about on a daily basis, like blockchain, AI, all those weird terms that we just think are in the tech world. How are those going to impact our industry? We always seem to think it's irrelevant. Because the thing with technology is, it always seems like it doesn't work until it does. The development of them always starts super slowly, and then it's sudden. So which one of us uses Siri? Anybody uses Siri on their iPhones? Has your iPhone ever misinterpreted what you said or doesn't quite understand your question? That's a pretty common occurrence right now, and a lot of us dismiss Siri because of that. But that's because Siri is still a toddler. Imagine what it can do when the technology has developed so it becomes a teenager or a full-grown adult. So basically, thinking of all these things as simply gimmicks means that we are already behind. We need to think about what's going to matter tomorrow now. So whenever we think about the future and what robotics might possibly do to bartending, we're probably imagining this guy. And this will be the most painfully slow video you'll watch today. That woman is not genuinely happy, I can tell you that. So, that robot obviously accomplishes absolutely nothing in terms of efficiency, in terms of customer service. I mean, all it accomplishes is make this bar scene extremely awkward. But we have, this robot. So this is the Maker Shaker. Some of you may have seen it. It's now deployed on some cruise ships. It's on some on the Las Vegas Strip. This robot makes 133 cocktails an hour. And so far, it's made 1.5 million cocktails around the world. So this robot obviously increases efficiency. It increases consistency because once you enter the recipe once, it can replicate it a million times and be exactly the same. And I don't yet know a bartender that can do that with that much accuracy. But the value of this robot is actually beyond that. It's actually in the data. Every time it serves a cocktail, it takes the temperature of the surroundings, it has the time and day of the week, it has the gender of the person that it's serving, and it can actually start predicting and anticipating what you want to drink in the future. So this is something that we can think about on how we can share certain drink recipes worldwide. On a slightly smaller scale, we've got this system that is kind of almost your home Nespresso, but makes you your cocktails. Still has a little ways to go, because right now all the supplementary ingredients must actually be done by human hand. So your garnishes, your ice, or even your bitters. So when you ask for an old-fashioned, it's just really giving you a very accurate pour of whiskey, but that's about it. So the potential lies in that you can actually program in your own recipes. So you can have a signature cocktail that's served at all your house parties, make you a very popular person. So now that we're talking about recipes, do you guys think creating recipes is a human trait, distinctly human trait? Do we mostly agree with that? The scary thing is that we have now been able to essentially teach artificial intelligence about creativity and about coming up with creative things that we think are distinctly human. So this next song I'm actually going to play you is actually written instrumentally entirely by artificial intelligence. Sound?
Beyond what I can touch, I wish I could feel beyond what isn't real. I wish I could could imagine, yeah. There's more to who we are. There's more to what we could be. As I feel the weight of being, I'm learning how to break free. I'm breaking free.
That sounds like a Billboard chart topper to you, doesn't it? It's pretty scary. That is completely written by a robot. And it's done so by analyzing genres of music. It's done so by looking at popular music throughout the years, trying to write something that's actually audibly pleasing. Does anybody think this is cheating? Writing songs this way? It's only really cheating if you think creativity has only a certain bracket that it can work within. There are many ways to be creative, and we can actually work in tandem with machines to actually create things. So right now, we still have a ways to go before AI can start writing our cocktail recipes for us, because currently they're coming up with, recipes like this. Someone tried to teach AI to create recipes that would be popular on the internet, and we got stuff like swamp beef and cheese. We have completely meat circle. So while all of these don't exactly sound appetizing right now, it's starting a conversation that we can explore these collaborations between humans and machines. McCormick, everybody knows McCormick, salt, pepper, seasoning. These guys are already collaborating with IBM's AI scientists in order to enhance their food research, to discover flavors and mixtures based on some of the existing stuff that we haven't experimented with. So, personally at my bar, we have an infamous tom yum shooter. Amanda will know about it. But we have a shooter that sells like hotcakes. It's spicy, it's refreshing, it sells really well. And we've never really been able to create another recipe that sold as well as those shots. Wouldn't it be great if AI could analyze what made this sell so well in terms of flavor compounds and help me produce, a new shot that would make sales? So, another big implication I can see AI kind of impacting the industry is quite disruptive to a lot of traditionalists. I had the privilege of visiting Cognac last year. Anybody been to Cognac? Cognac? Yeah? So you guys have probably been able to witness kind of the time, the dedication, and the precision that a master blender has to go through, combining all these eau de vies in order to create cognac. It's a very lengthy process. You may have heard of Hennessy's legendary tasting committee. There's 8 people in it. They meet at 11 a.m. every single day because apparently that's when your palate is the sharpest. And they taste upwards of 50 samples of cognac. Blending, sampling, noting, in order to commit to their taste memories how to make the next generation's cognac. Because they're planning 50 years ahead. Now this process is now being completely disrupted by Swedish distillery, Mecca Myra. And in collaboration of Microsoft's AI, they have sped up this entire blending process. Granted, this is whiskey, where I was talking about cognac previously. But this whiskey and the AI has analyzed 70 million different combinations of recipes based on the existing ones that the distillery already has, and by also analyzing the feedback from their consumers and their critics with all their existing recipes, they're able to come up with a new one with this AI that they think will be the most appealing. Now, if I can only give you one stat that algorithms like this do actually work, it would be that couples who met online through matchmaking services and got married have a 20% lower divorce rate than couples, the population as a whole. So the algorithms must be saying something. Now, not all of us have $1 million insured tongue like this guy, Robert Parker, palate, tongue. But there are artificial tongues now being developed that are able to spot and tell between whiskeys up to a 99% accuracy rate. Now, they're made up of little tiny slices of gold. There's hundreds of them, 500 times smaller than a human tongue, taste buds, but 99% accuracy. What does this mean for us? For people who are whiskey, especially whiskey distributors, you may know that estimated $52 million worth of high-end counterfeit whiskeys are now out there in the market. That's about a third of all rare whiskeys that are currently actually counterfeits. So an artificial tongue could do great leaps, can make great leaps in actually identifying these counterfeits and stopping the progress of that. So quality control, food safety testings, these are all the potentials of AI and artificial tongues. Now the bar. What does AI mean for our bars of the future? It may mean a lot of things. It may mean that we may know if the bar is chill or hopping before we even step into it, because we want to decide whether we want to go somewhere where there's fewer people so we can talk, or more people so we can start partying. We may want to know that what the female to male ratio is even in the bar if you want to go out and meet potential partners. As a bar owner, you may know the customer ratios of your regulars to unique visitors. You may also know how many staff you will need at any given time in order to service the bar quicker and more efficiently. And as consumers, you might even be able to start pouring your own beers with RFID bracelets. Now, for me as a bar owner, what I'm most excited about is actually the inventory taking piece, because bartenders, who's taking inventory of hundreds of bottles nowadays? That's a tedious process. So that may soon be something that we can automate through AI. So one of the technologies already just implemented within a bar is a facial recognition technology that actually puts people into a virtual queue. So you know how you're at the bar scrambling to get the bartender's attention, and then some asshole comes up, elbows you in a way, and screams, and they get the drink first? That doesn't have to happen anymore. This may seem like a very, very trivial thing. Let me make sure that all the guests get their drinks on time and in the right order. But stats tell us that Brits spend over 2 months' worth of days in their lifetime queuing, that 3/4 of them walk out due to long queues, and that using this technology can result in 78 million more pints of beer sold a year, if used correctly. It is also able to use this for age verification. So if the AI predicts that you might be underage, you have to get your card ready, your ID card ready. Saves a lot of time. One thing is people might be concerned about privacy implications of having facial recognition. But surveys have told us that actually 50% of people are into the idea of having facial recognition if it means that the bar recognizes them and can give them personal treatment. 1/3 of restaurant operators and bar operators have actually already agreed that they will try to implement some sort of AI technology in their bars within the next 5 years. It says so much about having us improve our efficiency, reduce wastage, both in terms of ingredients and in terms of staffing, and also elevate your level of service if you're able to digitally recognize all the guests who are coming through your door. Blockchain, kind of an odd term, something I never thought would really be a thing. I'm not a very techie person, but this term kept coming up. Blockchain. Why is this important? So one of the key restaurant trends we've actually seen this year is that consumers are starting to ask a lot of questions about provenance, ingredient provenance. Now, that applies with bars, too. When consumers are starting to ask questions about, where's that apple from? Where's that orange from? Is it organic? Is it farmed sustainably? When you're in a steak restaurant, you ask, is this Japanese beef? Is this American beef? Was it massaged with sake before it got to my plate? All these questions are starting to highlight the importance of provenance of ingredients. So blockchain can be crucial in actually keeping track and leading you back to the source. Our younger generation are now very skeptical of seeing long lists of ingredients and words that don't really make sense, coded words for ingredients. So brands like Elsa Bay and Bone Wines and a few other micro-distilleries have started applying this technology. Consumers can scan a QR code on the caps. They can track it from source to store. They can see filling dates, bottling dates, or even where which supplier supplied the barley or rye that went into the whiskey. This all enhances the company's storytelling abilities. And actually, in the wine's case, it can even detect if the bottle has been tampered with. So it can also act against counterfeits. If you want more direct implication in bars, and I keep emphasizing the storytelling piece of this, I think a lot of us know Mr. Ryan. He has embarked on this project to create the world's most truthful cocktail by using blockchain technology and offering traceability back to all the ingredients used within one cocktail. I totally agree with him that we're now we're focusing on recycling, we're focusing on reusing stuff as much as we can. Obviously, the Trash Tiki guy is doing a great job leading that movement, but empowering good practice and removing those people that exploit farmers and anything in the background is actually way more impactful in the long term than what we're doing with the plastic straws, which of course is step one. So this is important. All right, now to my favorite, actually, virtual reality. So we touched on just now about the storytelling piece, about all your consumers wanting to know the origin stories of where things come from. So direct-to-consumer sales has always been very powerful when your consumers are able to visit your winery or visit your distillery. And there is actually a growing interest in this amongst our consumers today. So in Europe, there's been a record number of distillery visitors in 2018. 2 million people visit distilleries in Scotland, 1.6 million visit distilleries in France, and 1 million people visit distilleries in Ireland. People are definitely interested in seeing where their booze is now coming from. Seeing the process and the craftsmanship behind spirits, or cocktails even, are one of the most powerful marketing assets you can have. Right? It is a way to make brand experience, brand impressions, something lasting and something deep. But unfortunately, it's also the least scalable. So a lot of times these distilleries are really far off track, far flung, and not everyone has the time and the means to go visit these distilleries. So I've recently done an event for Belvedere in Hong Kong where we tried to bring the environment where the rye is grown in to the room where we're within. So we had a full waterfall going between tables. It's supposed to simulate the forest and the lake. But the problem is we can only seat about 40 people at a time over here. So it's not very scalable. So what we have here now is VR. VR has the ability to bring the distillery and the experience to your consumers without having to physically transport them thousands and thousands of miles. So the Macallan has actually done a cool multi-sensory journey, full with dried ice. Looks a little silly right now, but we'll get used to it. There's dried ice leading you a journey of the wood. You can smell everything. Again, looks a little bit silly over here, but Patron has managed to fly us around as a little bee buzzing through the distilleries through VR. I think Jim Beam has invited you to become the whiskey. So when you put on the VR glasses, you see the journey of the liquid through the distillery. So all these things may seem like gimmicks, but this is what our next generation is looking for. They want to experience this. The hashtag generation wants to experience your brands. So VR has real staying power when it comes to both bartenders and consumers alike, especially in terms of brand education. So for my own bar, I actually always try to do virtual tours of the distilleries of all the brands that we serve, because I realized that when the bartenders get a chance to actually see the people and the places where the bottles that they're using every day are made, they're able to convey those stories better to their consumers. Another VR idea I've played around with but never had the time to execute was virtual guest shifts. Seems odd, but we all know the importance of cross-bar pollination when it comes to exchange of ideas, when it comes to driving more sales, and even when it comes to award networking. Sending bartenders across the pond is always good. But again, this is something that requires resources. So what if we brought the other bartender to you? Bacardi has actually done something similar with Virgin Atlantic. So they partner with their lounges in the Heathrow Airport, and they had a menu featuring cocktails from a lot of world-famous bars, and their guests can don a silly pair of VR goggles and be transported to those bars, and by the time they take off their goggles, that cocktail is sitting in front of them. So it's almost as if they experience the bar for themselves. Pretty magical. Not quite same as being there yet, but we're getting close. Now, there's another aspect of VR I just wanted to quickly touch upon, just because I find it fascinating. It may not be applicable to everyone over here, other than maybe drink brands for now. But on our other realm of virtual reality, we have eSports. Again, just doesn't seem relevant to us right now as bartenders or brand owners in the industry. But just wanted to give a shout out to all the brand advertisers out there. Here are some stats, and I'm sorry I'm reading. But Fortnite now has 200 million players. The tournament last year had $24 million in cash prizes. By 2020, the industry is looking to generate $1.5 billion in annual revenue. On the last Fortnite tournament, 15,000 people watched from an arena at the time that 5 million people streamed online while on Twitch, while also providing their own commentary or sharing their experience with others. And more importantly, TV subscriptions have fallen by $3.6 million in 2017. Sorry, 3.6 million people in 2017. So our virtual selves are moving places, are moving. The mass gatherings are changing. You know, as spirit brands, we're used to sponsoring events like this, music festivals, F1, competitions. These are stuff where we find big spirit logos in. But how about this? Does anyone know what this is? This is a virtual concert that happened in Fortnite. Oops. 10 million people attended this concert by Marshmello. 10 million people were at this concert. Probably the most attended concert in the world, but it was digital. All these people, these are avatars. So a sizable sum of microtransactions actually happened within this game during this concert because they were buying new skins and new emotes to use to dance around with during this scene. It was only 10 minutes long, really. So do you see the advertising potential here? How is this going to translate from our traditional advertising in traditional sports, like the F1, to something like this? How are we going to translate that into that demographic who are spending a lot of times at home? Something to consider. Now we move on to something a little bit more related to reality again. It's augmented reality. Just to clarify the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality. Augmented reality, we're still seeing the world as it is, but with a supplement, something that's enhanced. We've touched on the importance of storytelling many times now, as well as creating memorable brand experience for the digital generation. Bartenders, who are bartenders? Raise your hand, please, so I know. Bartenders, all right. How many times have you, put your heart and soul into designing a cocktail? You came up with a story, right? You were trying to evoke, being on a beach in Mexico, or trying to put the feelings you had while listening to a piece of music into a drink, but when you serve it, it's really just something on the rocks, right? When you look at it. You have to explain to your guests, the inspiration behind that drink, even though it just looks like, a drink in a glass. Because that adds so much value for the customer. If you had just served them that drink in a glass, they're just like, shit, I'm just paying $20 for this drink in a glass. I don't have emotional connection to it. But when you tell them that story, oh, I was inspired to do this while I was sitting on, a beach in Mexico, waiting for my lover to arrive, something like that, they get a connection. So how do we tell this story without always having to physically be there to tell it? So City Social has done a good job using AR to add visual elements to give you the mood and feel behind the cocktails. You just download an app, scan the QR code that's on your coaster, and kind of these images appear beside it. Another way to use AR in this context be maybe the actual coaster's menu itself. So how often do we always change our menus, right? Nowadays, a lot, because we want to be seasonal, we want to be up to date. So instead of reprinting your whole menu again and again, we can do it digitally. We can make it so your Snapchat happy customers are able to see how the cocktail actually looks like before they get it, so they can stop asking you which one's the most Instagrammable one. It also means that you can provide more information on any given component of that cocktail without having to run them through it, and they can do it digitally. There's so much potential over here. I'm going to share this next one just because I found it really amusing. Bottles also need to stand out on the shelf, and one winery has, created a narrative between two bottles when they stand next to each other. I'm sharing this because I found it hilarious. All right. So zombie apocalypse aside, we'll move on to Google Glass. Does anybody remember these dorky things? Remember where it came out? And yeah, I know everyone looked at them and you must be a douchebag if you're wearing a Google Glass, right? So this is an example of a technology that's still in its infancy. So Google Glass is not dead. It just hasn't figured out its place in society yet. All right, this Google Glass or technology similar to it is inevitable because, right now, like me, we're glued to our screen, we're looking down, and we have to eventually transition back into the real life where we actually look at the environment that we're interacting with. So Google Glass may not be applied in a mainstream right now, but a lot of companies are actually using them for different things, like training. Boeing actually uses them to train their new staff, but also so they can actually work with machinery and mechanics hands-free. And it's actually increased accuracy, job efficiency by 30%. And the work quality of new employees is improved by 90% by using this Google Glass. Now, how do we apply that to our industry? So obviously, this can be applied in distilleries when you can monitoring temperatures, monitoring the progress of aging. But as bartenders, we got a lot of recipes in our head now. And I've got crap memory. All right, what if we are able to actually still interact with our customers while we're looking at recipes? This is not cheating. I just want to make that clear. This is not cheating. This is when back in the day, we said maybe calculators is cheating, but it really is just taking a mundane task off of our hands so we can focus on the more important things in front of us that are distinctly human, the human interaction. You no longer have to think about what recipe you're making if you can just see it, So focus on the things that you actually cannot replace with machines. Smart voice assistants. So we have touched briefly on Siri earlier on. Pretty much more than 26% of the US population currently has a smart speaker at home. More than 22% of people in Britain has a smart speaker at home. This is growing. This is coming. By 2020, about 50% of all search will be actually done through a voice tech. 10 years ago, we would have thought it would been ridiculous to have like a disembodied voice of Alexa in our homes speaking to us or listening to us all the time. But this is happening right now. Scary, but true. We may still have a doubts because, like I said, Siri still misunderstands me sometimes. Somebody said they use Siri here. It still misunderstands me. This is my experience with Siri mostly.
Hey, Siri. Remind me to upload this video today in an hour.
Sorry, Stetson. I can't remind you in the past. Okay, I'll remind you to upload this video.
For those of you who can't hear, basically it's just not understanding a simple request such as a reminder.
In an hour.
Okay, I added call to be reminded today in an hour to your reminders.
Puts it in the calendar.
No.
That's my experience with Siri. But like I said, it is still in its infancy. It will change. Other things in voice tech. Shopping. Now you can tell Alexa to do things for you, do your shopping for you. Soon, like Alexa and Siri are going to be able to tell you, where you should be drinking nearby. How do you make a drink? What brands should you be using in your drink? How is that cocktail made? Maybe it can even teach you more about the bottle itself. There's so many things that they can answer if only you're on this platform. So voice is basically the new mobile experience. Alexa owners can now ask their device to open a Talisker tasting, where they will lead you through an audio journey on how to taste and appreciate scotches. You can ask Alexa to send you a sample of Bailey's or send you a sample of Bacardi simply by saying, "Send me a sample of Bacardi." These are all things that we could never have imagined just 5 years ago even. So with that comes e-commerce, buying online, e-commerce. So there's been a steady increase of 1% of retail sales in 2000 to 16% in 2019. Online alcohol sales is now $1.7 billion in 2017, and it grows 2%. It will grow 2% annually up to 2025. China, India, actually fastest growing e-commerce markets. So this is a lot of online e-commerce, especially when it comes to spirits and more niche products, comes from a greater demand for premium and super premium goods. So things that you normally may not find in your usual supermarkets, you're going to start looking for online. Malls and traditional retail are becoming less and less relevant, as we know. Amazon has jumped in on the game with Drizzly, so you can actually have same-day service in over 100 markets now in the States selling alcohol. Most importantly, the reason why the new generation is going towards e-commerce is because they want to know what their peers think through the ratings before they make a retail decision. And 63% of the consumers say they want personalized recommendations. You can only really do that if you have the full data of what you already like and what you have already been purchasing online. The other thing that I want to note that I didn't do a slide on, I've remembered, that's delivery food business. Deliveroo, is that common here? Deliveroo, everyone orders food here. Deliveroo, Food Panda. So delivery food business obviously has changed the way we eat as well. But what you also didn't know, it's also changed our preferences in cuisines. Some traditional cuisines, such as actually Chinese cuisine and stuff like fish and chips, that are not on this deliverable food model, not on these apps, younger people are starting to eat less and less of because it's actually less accessible. Is this something we need to start thinking about with our bars? Do we need to make sure that people don't stop drinking cocktails because they're not getting it through Deliveroo because wine and beer are easier? It's just a thought. All right, over here I just cover quickly some of the topics that I'm not going to go into in depth. Things that may change our industry. Stuff like self-driving cars. Again, something that we don't really think is relevant. But you know, the idea of self-driving cars means you no longer need a designated driver, that will be able to reduce accidents on the road. And Morgan Stanley actually predicts that an extra $56 million of value will be generated in alcohol sales once completely autonomous cars are going to be on the road. Yay. So also, genetic technology. Again, something abstract, but perhaps we'll be able to start understanding, our sensitivities to alcohol. Some people go like, oh, I only get a headache when I drink champagne, or tequila always makes me more drunk than everything else, and now we can finally go like, no, you're just drinking too much. It's nothing to do with your genes. So we can do that, and also Maotai, everybody knows the sorghum spirit from China, are actually embarking in a genetic study to discover sequence the microbes that are involved in the fermentation that produces the very specific flavor in order to replicate it or create something similar that will be just as attractive to the population. Molecular spirits. Some of you may have heard of Glyph. World's first molecular spirit. It starts with a base spirit, but it has never been aged, never seen wood, never seen a barrel. But in less than 24 hours, we can make it a whiskey simply by using chemical compounds that have the same flavor characteristics as what we find in an aged whiskey. What does that mean? What is that going to do to change the whiskey and cognac into brown spirits industry where we have to wait years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years to produce a certain flavor profile in whiskey? Lots of implications there. So overall, what you just need to think about and the takeaways with all these techie things that we just talked about is still the importance of storytelling. Storytelling is still something that is crucial in our industry, both for brands and both for bars. So AR, purists might say, I don't want AR to sell my drink. I don't want blockchain to be part of my drink. That is falling behind. You need to use this technology, integrate it into your daily life in order to support the very human idea of storytelling. Storytelling is a full class in any MBA course, by the way. This is important. So in this world today where we have a boom of like 1,500 distilleries, 5,000 breweries, 10,000 wineries in America, that's just America competing for shelf space. And we have something like over 65,000 cocktail bars or something like that. We're vying for attention now. And the only way to differentiate yourself is if you excel at storytelling. And also on the brand experiences. All your consumers, the younger consumers nowadays, want to experience the brands and have a personal connection with it. So problem solving with imaginative thinking, things that robots still can't do. We need to focus on things like empathy, divergent ways to think about problems. We used to be machines back when we were in school, when we were younger. Actually, our generation over here in this room, we were still taught to memorize vocabulary for the SATs. We were still taught to do mental math sums in our heads. These were all training us to be robots. Things need to change now. We need to train ourselves to be creatives again, to be creatives that robots cannot imitate. So I encourage all of you guys, as bar owners, as bartenders, as brands, to focus to going back to this, seemingly the basics, but to incorporate, obviously, some of the technologies that we've discussed. We can keep fermenting and clarifying using cannabis in our stuff, but the future is not the clear pina colada infused with cannabis. It is the story that tells us how we got that clear pina colada infused with cannabis. And I personally would be happy to pay, $20 US to hear that story if it's been told well. So hopefully today I leave you guys with, some food for thought. And yeah, thank you. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Victoria. That was super insightful. If any of you have any questions, please raise your hands and I'll pass the mic around so we can all listen to it. And this makes room for discussion as well.
Okay. I'll do my best.
Nope.
Questions?
Anyone?
Yeah.
Hi there. A lot of this is so exciting, first of all, but it also feels like it would need a lot of an outside investment, like maybe with an agency partner or something like that. What would be like some easy first steps for a bar or a brand to get involved in something like VR or AR?
Well, so I know this is quite intimidating. Before this technology becomes ubiquitous, it is still very expensive to invest in. Which is why you see a lot of the examples are all big brands doing them. So on a smaller scale, yes, we are able to maybe consider what type of experiences we can create within the bar itself that focuses on storytelling. If we can create simple applications that are actually easy to build, or easy to code, and not too expensive. So if we can actually create our menus, I believe there's a whiskey bar that now has their menus online that allows you to record the whiskeys you've tried there, take notes, but also read more about them. There are lower tech ways to kind of approach this right now. But again, it will take time, but it's more like brands need to start keeping this in mind, yeah, for the future.